For most middle-class families, the chains do not come from reckless spending or illegal loans. They come from the most respectable contracts in modern life: the home loan, the credit card, and the student loan. Each one promises a better future, and together they can quietly turn your dreams into a lifetime payment plan. I spent months tracing how everyday debt evolved from a rare tool into the default way. To buy a house, to study, and even to cover basic living costs. I looked at how mortgages, credit cards, and student loans changed over the last 50 years, and at what actually happened to the families who signed them. When you line up the numbers, the advertising, and the personal stories, a pattern appears. What surprised me most is that this is not mainly a story about people being irresponsible. Many borrowers did exactly what they were told was smart and grown up. The problem is not only the people who borrow. The problem is how these debts are structured to pull the maximum amount of money from the most careful people for the longest possible time. In this video, I have turned that pattern into a simple map of how respectable debt becomes a lifetime chain. Step by step, we will follow a family signing a mortgage, a student signing a loan, and a worker leaning on a credit card. And we will see how each decision quietly shifts power from them to the lender. By the end, I will give you a clear checklist. The 3 kinds of debt that almost always make you poorer in the long run, and the warning signs that show when a good offer is really a trap. Let us start with a house. Not a mansion on a hill, but the kind of home that appears in bank brochures and real estate listings. A small yard, 3 bedrooms, a kitchen that finally has enough space for everyone to sit at the table. A couple in their 30s walks through it on a Sunday afternoon, already imagining where the couch will go and who will sleep in each room. By the time they sit down with the loan officer on Monday, they are not comparing numbers anymore. They are defending a dream. The conversation around the desk is calm and professional. The officer explains the monthly payment, the interest rate, and the idea that this is an investment in their future, not just an expense. On paper, the mortgage looks perfectly reasonable. The payment fits into their monthly budget as long as they are careful. The rate is described as competitive. The term, which is 30 years, is presented as the natural choice for people who want a manageable payment. What is not said very loudly is that for many years, most of what they pay will go to interest, not to owning more of the house. In the first decade, the balance hardly moves. If they move, refinance, or extend the loan, the clock quietly resets, and the bank receives another long stream of interest from the people who thought they were almost done. This is how the first chain is built. The mortgage is not evil by itself. Many people would never own a home without some form of long-term loan. The problem appears when the loan is so large and so long that it turns flexibility into a luxury. The family cannot change jobs easily because the payment demands a certain level of income. They feel nervous about saving for anything else because every spare dollar seems to belong to the house. If one person loses a job or gets sick, the home that was supposed to be a safety and a shelter becomes the main source of fear. Now imagine a different scene. A teenager sits in a school office with a guidance counselor. On the wall are posters that say, "Follow your dreams," and "College is the path to success." The student's parents did not go to university, and they want their child to have more choices. The counselor explains that tuition is high, but there is no need to worry. There are loans designed exactly for this purpose. Everyone takes them. The message is simple. Education debt is not really debt. It is an investment. In future you will be richer and will pay it back without trouble. The forms are long and the numbers are large, but the pressure in that room is emotional, not mathematical. Saying no feels like saying no to your own potential. The student signs documents that describe tens of thousands of dollars or even more, as if those amounts were just one more formality. The payments begin years later, after graduation, and by then interest has been quietly growing. When the first bill finally arrives, it does not feel like an investment. It feels like a second rent, attached directly to the person's name and identity. Years pass. The graduate now works in a job that pays enough to survive, but not enough to make the loans disappear quickly. Promotions come slowly. Life events crowd in. There is a desire to move out, to start a family, to maybe buy that same kind of house we saw earlier. Every choice is filtered through the monthly payment that never seems to shrink. Some people defer the loans and watch the balance grow. Others pay faithfully for a decade and realize they still owe almost as much as at the beginning. The debt has migrated from a hopeful promise on the guidance counselor's wall to a quiet, heavy presence in every major decision. A third scene plays out in a bright store with music in the background. A worker in their 20s or 30s is buying a phone, a washing machine, or simply groceries during a tight month. The cashier offers a card. There's a welcome bonus, a low introductory rate, and a line about building credit. The person tells themselves that this card is only for emergencies, only for this one purchase, only until things are more stable. Then the car needs a repair. Then a medical bill arrives. Then the rent rises, and the card becomes the bridge between income and expenses. Credit cards are built around one simple idea. The minimum payment looks small, almost harmless. As long as you send that small amount, the account is considered in good standing. But the unpaid balance rolls forward, and interest is added to interest. The statement arrives with a long table that shows how many years it will take to pay the balance if you only send the minimum amount. Many people glance at the table once, feel a shock, and then push the paper aside. The card has quietly moved from safety net to second set of bills. It is no longer a tool. It is part of the monthly landscape, as fixed in the mind as rent and utilities. When you step back from these three stories, a pattern appears. None of the characters set out to be irresponsible. Each one responded to a strong cultural message. A good adult owns a home, earns a degree, and has access to credit. The contracts they signed were approved, advertised, and praised by respected institutions. Yet the structure of those contracts pushes them toward the same outcome. Very long timelines, front-loaded interest, and the constant option to extend or refinance keep payments flowing for as many years as possible. The result is that people who work hard and pay on time can still feel as if they are running on a treadmill that never slows down. The question then becomes, which debts almost always make this treadmill worse? And which ones can be tools if handled with extreme care? The first type of debt that often makes people poorer over the long run is the oversized home loan. This is the mortgage that stretches a family to the edge of what they can afford in a normal year. It assumes that income will always rise, that interest rates will stay low, and that there will be no long gaps in employment. When reality fails to follow that script, families start using other forms of debt just to keep the mortgage current. The house payment eats the budget, and everything else is funded with cards and personal loans. In that situation, the dream home is not building net worth. It is slowly consuming it. The second type of debt that usually harms people is revolving high-interest debt, especially on credit cards and store cards. This is the debt that has no fixed payoff date, that can be carried from month to month indefinitely. It often begins with a small balance and a specific purpose, but it grows during stressful periods and then never quite returns to zero. Interest rates in the double digits mean that a large part of each payment is simply the cost of carrying the balance, not progress toward eliminating it. Over years, households can pay an amount that equals the original purchase many times over, and still owe money at the end. The third type of debt that tends to make people poorer is education debt. That is not connected to a realistic plan for higher earnings. Borrowing to learn a skill that has strong demand and clear income potential is one thing. Borrowing large amounts for a vague promise of more opportunities is something very different, where the loan balance is far out of proportion to the starting salary in the chosen field. The degree becomes a financial anchor. It delays saving, delays buying a home, and sometimes even delays having children, all because the monthly payments claim such a large share of each paycheck. Seeing these three types of debt clearly does not mean that every mortgage, every card, and every student loan is poison. It means that they are powerful tools that are often pointed in the wrong direction. A smaller, shorter mortgage that leaves room in the budget can still be a path to stability. A credit card that is paid in full every month can still be a useful payment method. A carefully chosen education program with controlled costs can still raise a person's lifetime income. The difference between a tool and a chain is not the name on the contract. The difference is the structure of the debt and the level of risk it quietly demands from you. The real work for a middle-class family is not to memorize every technical detail of finance. It is to ask different questions before signing. Instead of asking only, "Can I make this payment right now?" a safer question is, "What happens if something goes wrong for 6 months or for 1 year?" Instead of asking only, "What do I get today?" it helps to ask, "How much total will I pay over the life of this debt, and what will I have at the end?" Instead of assuming that steady employment and low rates will last forever, it is wiser to assume that at least one serious setback will happen and to see whether the plan survives that test. By the end of this video, my aim is not to convince you to avoid all debt forever. My aim is to help you see the hidden pattern that turns ordinary, respectable loans into lifetime chains. When you recognize that pattern in your own life, you can begin to loosen it. You can choose a smaller house that leaves room to breathe. You can create a plan to clear revolving balances instead of carrying them forever. You can question whether the next education loan will actually translate into higher income. Those changes do not look dramatic from the outside, but over 10 or 20 years, they can be the difference between working only to service old promises and working to build a future that truly belongs to you.